Just days after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's return to power, Israel's new far-right government takes action against the Palestinians. Hello, I'm Arnold Neidem, and this is The Heat. Israel's Security Cabinet has approved a series of punitive measures against the Palestinian Authority. It comes a week after the UN General Assembly voted and approved a resolution requesting the International Court of Justice give an opinion on the legality of Israel's occupation of the West Bank and East Jerusalem. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu issued a swift response.
We've decided on several steps against the Palestinian Authority, which has promoted an extremist anti-Israeli resolution at the United Nations. These steps include sanctions against senior Palestinian figures, deductions of funds, and a halt to Palestinian construction projects in Area C, projects that go against explicit commitments that the Palestinian Authority took upon itself. We have founded a different government with a different policy, and everyone will see that in the future.
Palestinian leaders have rejected the allegations and are calling for international condemnation.
We consider these measures a new war against the Palestinian people, their capabilities and their funds, and a war against the national authority and its survival and its achievements. They target the entire Palestinian national project. These deductions are illegitimate and illegal.
For more now on the Israeli-Palestinian relations and Benjamin Netanyahu's return to power, let's bring in our panel. Joining us from Rome is Ariel Kahana. He's a senior diplomatic commentator with Israel Hayom. From London, Abdel Bari Atwan is the editor-in-chief of al-Youm here in Washington, D.C. Moien Odeh is a human rights and international law attorney. And from Jerusalem, Amos Esael is a senior commentator with the Jerusalem Post. Thank you, everyone, for being with us. Amos, let me start with you. According to most accounts, Israel now has the most far-right government it has ever had, and critics and analysts point to the presence of people like the very controversial politician Itamar Ben-Gvir in the cabinet. And if we look at some of the actions that Israel has taken in response to this resolution at the United Nations, it's rescinded travel permits, including that of the Palestinian foreign minister. It's also withholding tens of millions of dollars from the Palestinian Authority. What is the motive behind these Israeli actions? I mean, does Israel believe that it can influence the UN in some way by doing this?
I think there is, first of all, frustration in the face of the Palestinian initiative to actually approach the court in The Hague. That is a type of diplomatic warfare, and as far as this government is concerned, it is merely responding to a situation that was created by the Palestinians. At the same time, this government feels a need to grandstand, to impress its electorate, and to tell the Israeli public that there is a new landlord, and these are going to be his designs. Having said both of these things about their motivation, in terms of this, the effect of this opening salvo, I wouldn't make that much of it because at the end of the day, what will matter is what will happen down in the field. And I think that this government will mostly respond rather than initiate to what will happen on the Palestinian front. We can see right now that the thrust of its energy is directed towards a purely domestic but extremely dramatic affair. I mean, the attempt at this government, on this government's part, to launch a constitutional reform that is extremely controversial and ready to tear Israeli society asunder.
Moien Odeh, what is the point of this resolution, which is sitting in the International Court of Justice right now, on wanting that court to give its judgment on the legality or otherwise of the Israeli presence or occupation in the West Bank and East Jerusalem?
Israeli legal system and the Israeli courts always argued that the Israeli occupation in the West Bank and East Jerusalem is a little bit different than usual occupation, because it was a long-term occupation, more than 7 years already now. So the whole idea is now to get a clear definition from the highest legal court to explain to the Israelis and to the world that the occupation in the West Bank and East Jerusalem is illegal, and there's no need now to go to the actions of to the details of the occupation or the action of the occupation. The court will not discuss like an act here, an act there. It will discuss in general the occupation, and it will make it clear that the occupation by itself is illegal, and that the international community should work very fast to end the occupation, even away from any diplomatic or any political process. And this will be a challenge for the whole international community, that they need to end this occupation as soon as possible, and they need to put sanctions or any other measures on the Israelis to end this occupation.
Yeah, but do the Palestinians really believe that that is going to happen? I mean, this occupation, as you pointed out, has been in place now for decades.
Well, we know that the opinions of the International Court of Justice is usually argumentary, or just they are not binding, and we know that this happened also in 2004 when we got the similar opinion on the legality of the wall. But still, it's building block over block, and to make it clear that occupation is illegal, its actions is illegal, and then it's the international community who should decide. They will work according to the international law and according to the rules of the international law, or they will follow their own interest or any other measures against the Israeli government.
Right. Ariel Kahana, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he wants to expand settlements on the occupied territories, which in itself would be a violation of international law. He's also calling for all areas of historic Palestine to be Israeli, and that includes the West Bank and East Jerusalem. Looking at the bigger picture here, does this mean Israel has just completely abandoned any idea or plan to establish a two-state solution?
Hello, Alan, and thanks for having me. So I think there are so many facts we have to bring into this discussion. First of all, the UN resolution is not related to the new Israeli government. It's a new right-wing government because it was pushed by the Palestinians during the previous government, which was actually a leftist one. Moreover, the Palestinians, Chairman Abbas, the chairman of the PA, moved this process in the UN against a request by Secretary of State Antony Blinken, and against a request by the Israeli former Defense Minister Benny Gantz, again, which is center-left. So what happened in the UN a few weeks ago is not related at all to the new Israeli right-wing government. Secondly, talking about the UN, the international community position, I think we all have to know that most of the, let's say at least, democratic Western countries, including the US, including Canada, including UK, including Australia, and many others, voted against the Palestinian suggestion in the United Nations. So if they want the international community to come and help them, it won't help, because most of the democratic countries, I'm repeating it, were against this resolution. And the reason for that is that the conflict won't be solved by international or outside powers. If I may say, Alan, one last sentence. There is a piece of land, some are calling it Palestine, some are calling it the Holy Land, the Holy Israeli Land. What I can tell you as a Jew and as an Israeli, this is the land of Israel, and there are disagreements who belong to this land.
Yeah. Okay, if you say it's the land of Israel, what happens to all the Palestinians that are living in it?
So for many years, for decades actually, one prime minister after another, I'm talking about Israeli prime minister, suggested quite a big part of the land to the Palestinians. Ehud Barak, 23 years ago, suggested 90% of the territory. Ehud Olmert, 95. Benjamin Netanyahu, about 60. The Palestinians, and that's the reason we still have the conflict. The Palestinians rejected one offer after another. And that's a problem we have. And we should remember as well, Aaron, that actually there are two Palestinian governments, one in Ramallah and the other one, which is definitely a terrorist one, in Gaza. So who should Israel speak with?
Yeah. Abdel Bari Atwan, It would seem that any solution to this, any settlement of this conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians would have to take place after discussions between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And going to the United Nations or the International Court of Justice or getting any other third party involved would actually complicate matter and, as we have seen, probably isolate one party from the other. So what is the Palestinian position right now? How do Palestinians respond to what is happening?
It's a very good question, actually. If the Palestinian doesn't go to the International Court of Justice, where do you want them to go? If they don't go to United Nations, where do you want them to go?
Well, how about going to the Israelis?
Yes, they did go to the Israelis. They signed Oslo agreement with the Israelis about 30 years ago. And they have been talking to the Israelis for the last 30 years. How they were rewarded because of this. You know, more settlement, about 800,000 settlers in the West Bank and Jerusalem. But just for the last year, 177 Palestinians were killed, 30 of them children by the Israeli. Just last year and this year, we are just on the 10th day of the first of the 10 years, and four Palestinians were killed by the Israeli bullets. 3 of them were children. So what do you expect the Palestinians to do after that? And what do you expect the Palestinians to do with the new government saying that all of the West Bank is ours? And, you know, we are going to expand old settlement, and build a new one there because it is our land. What will happen to more than 4 million or 3.5 million Palestinians living in that part? This is a very cruel government. This is very right-wing radical government. This is a fascist government which would like to actually dismiss, transfer, or maybe kill the Palestinians who are under their occupation. So the Palestinians now are turning to the international law, to international, United Nations, saying to them, look, you know, we are under occupation, the longest occupation in history. So please, you know, give us your version. Give us your actually ruling.
Right.
Is this occupation is going to continue forever? What about the Palestinians there? Where is the two-state solution?
Yeah.
Where is the international resolutions?
Okay. Amos, does Abdel Bari Atwan pose a fair question there? Where do the Palestinians go right now? I mean, given that the occupation has been in place for several decades right now, there's been really no movement on the two-state solution for quite some time.
Oh, no, Anand, what you said was right. The address is the Israeli public. There can be grievances about this or that Israeli government. I may have my own grievances, as anyone who reads my columns knows well, about a succession of Israeli governments, this one certainly. And yet, in terms of the Palestinian imperative, it is to address the Israeli public. And the Israeli public is accessible and more than happy to hear new music coming from Palestinians like my current interlocutors. And the tragedy is that ever since us Israeli voters crossing of the Rubicon back in 1992, when we voted by a landslide for Yitzhak Rabin, and later also for Ehud Barak, and later also for Ehud Olmert, each of whom in his turn came forth with extremely generous, as I see it, or at least great gambles in terms of the territorial offers that they made the Palestinians on the counter and in the presence of American interlocutors. Those were rejected one by one. That is what the Israeli public saw. It saw a policy of rejectionism. Worse, it also saw a language of hostility, and it still sees that, regardless of this government. Now, the language of hostility is in Palestinian textbooks and in Palestinian leaders' rhetoric. This is where the problems lie.
All right, Amos, let's look at the broader situation right now. And if we look at Israel's place in the Middle East. Israel has had some diplomatic successes in the last few years. I mean, at one time, Israel was only recognized by Egypt and Jordan, diplomatic recognition, that is. And then, of course, we had the Abraham Accords, and that extended that diplomatic recognition to other countries in the region. I mean, is that in any danger right now? Because we've seen criticism from one of the countries that Israel has new diplomatic relations with, that's the UAE.
Yes, I would be the last one to belittle this statement on the part of the Emiratis. I take it seriously. And I do agree with your suspicion that this great diplomatic achievement is now imperiled in the wake of this political transition in Israel. But having said all this, things will depend on what happens down in the field. And clearly Netanyahu is deeply interested in, first of all, upholding what he has personally achieved, and in fact in expanding it. Obviously, this is not what he's been doing in terms of Israel's domestic politics, but I think he will not try, he will do his best to prevent such an avalanche. But everyone here in Israel understands that in order to expand the Abraham Accords dynamics, and obviously the next capital that he's eyeing is Riyadh, and he wants to go to Saudi Arabia. The only way to get there is through some kind of change in Israel's political composition right now, or configuration. I think this is where he would like to later get, but I don't see how he gets there with his legal situation being the way it currently looks.
Yeah, Abdel, Bari, Atwan, do you think the Abraham Accords are in any way endangered right now? Netanyahu is actually scheduled to visit the UAE. That was set for next week, but that visit has been postponed, perhaps indefinitely. We don't know that. The UAE has previously warned Netanyahu about including people like Itamar Ben-Gvir in his cabinet. But what do you believe are the wider diplomatic implications of this?
Well, I believe this agreement are facing a huge challenge from the people there, because when these United Arab Emirates and Bahrain in particular signed this agreement, they said that we are going to help the Palestinians. We are going to actually prevent the annexation of the West Bank to Israel. So people were, it was a very strong actually argument from their side. But when you look at it, yeah, if you look at the statistics, if you look at the polls, you know, now at 22% only of the United Arab Emirates are supporting this agreement, and about 24% on Bahrain. So you can see, and when we compare these figures with the previous year, for example, that it was the double of these statistics. So I believe now that when Netanyahu said, I won the United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi will be my first destination after my actually winning this election, it will be Abu Dhabi. So Abu Dhabi, which was very generous with the Israelis, saying, no, you know, please wait a bit, and there is technical problems. There is no technical problems, but this kind of visit will endanger the Abu Dhabi government. So I believe these agreements were actually in the opposite direction. It gave different and very complicated results, and reflected badly on the government which signed it.
Ariel Kahana, the United States Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, he will be visiting Israel later this month. The Biden administration is expected to reiterate its commitment to Israel's security. But what do you expect to come out of that meeting?
I'm sure Alan will speak about all the known issues, first and foremost about Iran, which is a risk definitely to Israel, but at the same time to the other Gulf countries, including the UAE. And that's one of the reasons why the UAE signed a peace agreement with Israel. And I have no doubt they will be obligated to the deal. They made a move in the UN, but at the same time, they were a perfect phone call between the foreign ministries and foreign ministers and other ties between the countries that I have no doubt, again, will go on successfully. And the visit of Netanyahu in the UAE will happen in the coming weeks. I wanna reply to what Moien said before. I mean, it's actually what he said about Israel is trying to kill all Palestinians. I'm sorry, but that's a disinformation. It's a propaganda, and actually, that's what the Palestinian leadership is doing for decades. Instead of taking their own destiny in their own hands, like the UAE did, like Bahrain did, like many other Arab countries did. All what they are doing is putting the blame on Israel. Alan, you know very well that the international community and Israel are helping the Palestinians and are helping the Palestinian Authority to take their destiny, their future in their hands. But unfortunately, the reply we get and the international community is getting is actually it's a failed entity. I want to remind you that Abu Mazen, Mahmoud Abbas, is now beginning his 19th year of 4 years term, okay? He was elected in 2006, but he's a kind of dictator. So instead of blaming us, because Israel is ready for concessions, including Netanyahu, instead of blaming us, take your destiny in your own hands, take responsibility on your people's future, and then peace in our small land will happen as well.
Moien Odeh, the Palestinian lawyer and former advisor to the PLO negotiating team, Diana Butcher, she recently wrote an opinion piece in the New York Times, and I'm going to read to you part of what she had to say. She said, and I'm quoting here, she said, "We Palestinians live knowing that a vast majority of Israeli politicians don't support an end to Israel's military rule over the West Bank and Gaza Strip or equality for all its citizens. We are made to feel we are interlopers whose presence is temporary and simply being tolerated until such time as it is feasible to get rid of us." Now, if that is a widespread belief among Palestinians, where does the Palestinian Authority fit into this? What kind of purpose do they serve? I mean, do they have any credibility at this stage?
Well, we know that the credibility for the PA is going down, mainly because that there's no elections for the last 15 years, actually. And one of the sides to blame, I will go and blame Israel, Ariel, here, because you were saying that the Palestinians should take initiatives by themselves. The problem is, under occupation and without allowing them to elect their own leadership in East Jerusalem and mainly in East Jerusalem and beside other places, it will be very, very hard to get a united Palestinian leadership that can talk to Israel and achieve peace. This is one. Two, let's keep in mind that all the initiatives that your guests were talking about, the Olmert, Barak, or others, are not exactly as it was marketed here in this show and others. Usually, the solution is very easy: the green line. There's no need to talk a lot about other details. The problem when we go to the details, as you know, develop the details, and then it will be very, very complicated again. I understand that Palestinian Authority is facing a lot of issues, internally and externally. But still, for now, all the sanctions against the PLO and the PA, maybe this will give more legitimacy for the PA in the eyes of the Palestinians themselves. But still, I think Israel unfortunately succeeded through years to convince most, if not all, of the Palestinians that there's no opportunity of peace, unfortunately, because we are keep talking and talking and talking from one side, and Israelis keep changing facts on the ground from the other side. If we talk between 93 when Oslo Accords were signed and today, how many settlements were added? How many settlers were added in the West Bank and East Jerusalem? So unfortunately, all what's happening is more talks from the Palestinian side and more actions from the Israeli side.
All right, let me get a quick response to what you've said from Amos. Amos, go ahead.
Yes, I think that, first of all, nothing is irreversible. Israel has, in fact, demonstrated that with its disengagement from Gaza, in which albeit in turn for nothing, but still Israel did unfold and totally dismantle dozens of settlements and military bases and retrieved from the Gaza Strip the last of thousands of Israelis. So the assumption that whatever is being done in the field cannot be reversed has been proven empirically unfounded. Secondly, as I keep saying, this discussion of what will happen physically between Israel and the Palestinians is premature. We've learned the hard way because it needs to be preceded, all this physics needs to be preceded with chemistry. And unfortunately, the chemistry, as it is being forged by Palestinian leaders, and I say this with sadness, as an Israeli is openly backed all of the peace initiatives over the recent decades. This attitude, this chemistry on the part of the Palestinians is for us unworkable.
Okay, Abdel, Bari, Atwan, very quickly, I've got less than a minute left, but you know, there have been all kinds of questions being raised here in this discussion about the legitimacy of the Palestinian Authority. What is your view on that, given that, objectively speaking, they've been largely ineffective in moving towards peace or resolving this in any way?
You know, unfortunately, the Israeli undermined the Palestinian Authority completely. The Palestinian Authority did everything to actually respect the Oslo Agreement, including setting up about 50,000 security forces to protect the settlers, to protect the Israeli people, to cooperate with the Israeli security. But in reward of that, you know, you can see that the PLO ended with nothing. The Palestinian Authority ended with humiliation and actually losing its support among the Palestinian people. And now they are imposing sanctions against the Palestinian Authority and depriving them from their own money, the Palestinian money, which the Israelis are raising through taxes. So I believe if the Palestinian Authority undermined, that the Israelis who are responsible for that.
Okay, and we have to leave it there. Thank you to all of you for being with us on this discussion. That's all we have time for. Thanks to all our guests. I'm Arlen Naidu in Washington, D.C., and thank you for watching.